So hi everyone and welcome to the next episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast. And I'm really delighted today to welcome Claire Henley to the podcast. And we're going to have a conversation about comparisonitis, which I'm quite excited about. And we've got a good example as well, which we'll come on to. But thank you, Claire. Welcome to the podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Gail, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited.
I'm really looking forward to this. So for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. So who you are, where you're from and what you do, like, true like blind date style.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you say, my name is Claire Henley. I've recently moved to West Sussex, spent the previous 20 years up in Warwickshire. Really enjoying being back to the coast, given that I came from the Isle of Wight. That's where I was born. So this coast is familiar to me, but I haven't lived on it for a long time. So, yeah, it's an absolute joy to be back. In terms of what I do, it was so funny because I've been giving this a lot of thought recently, and going out networking, you have your little pitch and everything, but I'm not sure that it really encompasses what I do. And then I started researching it and kind of came up with these words like generalist, or even, believe it or not, slasher, which is where you do one thing slash another, but slasher sounds awful.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a portfolio careerist.
Oh, I
Which
like that.
basically means I've done lots and lots of things. I started out in the hospitality industry. I trained as a management accountant. I did many years as a hotel accountant. Still love hotels. And then I moved into financial services, still in the finance roles. Right up until I had my first child, and then took a bit of time out to be with him, and then the subsequent my second son who came along. Kind of went back to what shall I do now, and one of those moments in life where it's, well, shall I do the same thing again or shall I do something different? Anyway, I kind of fell back into finance. Couple of segues here and there, but basically fell back into finance. And then most recently spent some time caring for my parents, and moved into the third sector, into more of a part-time role, which just gave me that capacity and that scope to do that. And then, yeah, I really did have a bit of a change of heart. Don't really want to go back into finance roles completely. Still kind of keen to do, the odd bit of interim work if it comes up, but don't want to be stuck in something. So then I did a couple of bits of retraining, trained as a commercial mediator, and thought that would be a really good kind of use of the skills that I developed over my previous career and just life in general, to be honest. Felt like one of the things that having grey hair was a positive advantage for, in terms of being seen to be wise and measured and so forth. But then I also had the opportunity to train in something that was really good fun, and that was as a Lego SeriousPlay facilitator, which again kind of tucked into a lot of my previous roles where I'd been involved in mentoring people, leading teams, getting involved in training, and found out about this methodology, and really loved the way that it could be incorporated into corporate life or into team building, to get people to think differently. So did that training as well. And in essence, it's those two things that I'm hoping will bring me an income for the next few years.
Yeah, and loads of experience to bring to both of those things, right, as well, in terms of the Lego and the mediation. So many skills that throughout your career, I bet you've gathered and you've popped in your toolkit or your kit bag that you can now bring to those mediation sessions. And I've seen you in action with the Lego SeriousPlay, and the vibe in the room was incredible. It was absolutely brilliant. And also I've seen you at Room 2, which is the co-working space in Cheshire. So a little shout out to them where we go. And I heard all this Lego, and I don't think I'd quite realised you were there. And I was like, oh, I think Claire must be in here because I can hear all this Lego on the desk. So yeah, brilliant. And I hadn't realised that you were from the Isle of Wight either. I hadn't realised that.
Ah, right, yes.
Yeah.
We haven't mentioned that. Yeah, I was born in Newport. Well, St Mary's Hospital, as everybody who's from the Isle of Wight was of a certain age.
Yeah, brilliant. So we're going to have a conversation about comparison, because something happened for you and I at networking that could well have had I not have learnt to manage my comparisonitis, might have affected me quite differently to how it might have affected you. But before we do that, tell me a little bit about what confidence means to you.
This is a really interesting thing. I was sort of trying to come up with something really, really slick and clever. And actually, I think that for me, confidence is the ability to feel the fear and do it anyway. So there are things that I do with the way that I am that people say to me, "Oh, you must be really confident." Because, for example, I'm very happy to walk into a room full of people I don't know in a networking or a social situation and just kind of walk in and find somebody to chat to. And I think, a lot of that is because I moved schools a lot when I was a child. My dad did contract work, so we moved schools a lot. So I was very, very often the new girl at school. So I just kind of don't mind being the new girl. It's something I've done a lot. But that doesn't really make me confident per se, because there are
Yeah.
things that I do lack confidence in, and I do have that niggling little voice in the back of my head that says, "Oh, well, you're not really good enough to do that." And, "Oh, do you think you should really do that?" And that's when I do quake and I lose confidence. And I guess in a work context, perhaps if I bid for a bit of work, I maybe do a proposal, and I send it off, and then I sit there going, "Oh, I don't think I've done that very well," or, "Oh, I missed that bit and I should have added that in. I bet everybody else's is better than mine." So that's where, I start to quaking in terms of confidence. But yeah, so I think confidence is, if you can feel the fear and do it anyway, then that is where you dig down into your confidence reserves.
Yeah, and confidence isn't about being fearless, it's about fearing less. So fear less. And you're absolutely
Yes.
right. And that little voice that you hear, people that have followed me for a while or have listened before, they know that that little voice I call Betty. So Betty's my inner critic, and she loves to say those things to me. She loves to ask me what if and say, "Oh, but Gail, oh, that's a bit risky. You don't want to do that." And for me, giving a name to my inner critic, or the voice, or the chimp, or whatever you want to call it, has really helped to kind of distance me from her. Because I was literally chatting to Victoria Shepherd this morning, and we were talking about, we spend a lot of time with ourselves, we listen to ourselves a lot, and we shouldn't believe everything that we hear, everything that we tell ourselves. They're all things, Claire, that you wouldn't say to me or to a friend or to someone else, either. They're all things that we say. And I think as
Yeah.
well, I don't know what you think about this, but I think this is where comparison then starts to show up, because you actually said there, "Oh, I bet everyone else's is better than mine. Everyone else's proposal is better than mine." And
Exactly.
actually, you might be the only proposal. Yours might be the only one. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
where,
I quite agree. I think that there's a real crossover from your kind of confidence levels, and I guess that, I think comparison sort of feeds the fear and confidence diminishes it.
oh
So you
yeah,
can get really, really tied up in this whole sort of comparison, and it goes across every aspect of life. You could I don't know, just think, "Oh, well, they got a bigger house than me, or I can't tell them where I live in case they live on a better street than I do," or "Oh, I better not go walk with them to the car park in case their car's better than mine," or and it can really, really erode at you in some really silly ways if you let it. Um,
yeah.
and I think, that's something that, yeah, definitely, this sort of sense of somehow being less than. And I had to do this because, of course, I am the Lego lady. So, I was thinking, which
Yes.
two bits of Lego would really work in terms of comparisonitis. And,
Yeah.
so if you take these two lovely ladies, this one's thinking, "Oh, look at this one. She's so petite and lovely." And this one's thinking, "Oh, look at her. She's so, she's got such presence, and she's so gorgeous, and she's got beautiful, lovely black hair and beautiful blue eyes." And actually, it's not a fair comparison at all. They're two
No.
unique, different little creatures. And we do that all the time.
I love that. We'd so
That's putting
do.
some
And you
Lego
know
in.
what? And the other thing that we'll have to have a picture of those as well. The other thing that I love was what you just said about comparison feeds fear and confidence diminishes it. And wow, that is so true, isn't it? Because it really does. Even in your two Lego people there, right? You put those up, and actually the smaller Lego figures probably thinking, oh wow, look how strong and how tall that. Immediately you're kind of almost looking up, aren't you, to that other
Yeah,
person? Yeah, wow. So the example that we've got was we were at networking, weren't we, a few
yeah.
weeks ago, and we were chatting to somebody who then invited you to go and speak at their other networking event, but didn't ask me. And for a split second, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why have they asked Claire and not me? And I wouldn't have gone anyway because that networking event is not my vibe. Um, and that might sound to some people like, oh, I wouldn't have gone anyway. It genuinely was that I wouldn't have gone because it's not
Yeah.
my vibe. I'm at that point now where actually I know kind of I'm confident enough to say what is and what isn't my networking vibe. But probably maybe a couple of years ago, that would have really bothered me, and I would have really thought about, wow, why did that person ask Claire and not ask me? I don't know how you felt in that moment at that event.
Well, I think that's the other really, really interesting thing about comparisonitis, isn't it? Because it is very much an internal thing. So I didn't, in all honesty, didn't even give it any thought. And had I given it thought, I would have thought a number of things. I would have thought, well, quite possibly Gail's already been asked and has either already done it or has declined. Quite possibly, Gail has previously kind of made it really clear that that's not the kind of direction that she wants to go into in terms of her networking and her business and so forth. Um, so, any number of things, but never for 1 minute did I feel, it's asked me and not her. So I think that is the thing about that perfect example, that it really highlights that it is something you do to yourself, and
Yeah,
the people
wow.
around you probably don't even notice that incident or anything else. But as you say, if you don't have that inner word with yourself or that inner confidence, it can eat and eat and eat away at you.
Yeah, it's so curious, isn't it? Because often in coaching, I know I work with people who will say things like, "Oh, I wish I'd spoken up at that meeting," or they should on themselves and say, "I should have spoken up and I didn't." And I bet everybody's walked away thinking, "Why didn't that person say anything?" But actually, that person is thinking exactly what you have just said there about you had no idea what was going on internally or could have been going on internally for me. Because you're actually thinking about what you've been asked to do and not really thinking about the other party. And I bet the person that said that probably didn't think about that either. So you're quite right, it's an
No,
internal piece of processing, but it's mega. This comparison thing is so big, isn't it? I wonder where, if you stop and
absolutely.
think about it, where does comparison actually show up for you, Claire?
Well, I mean, I think it does come back to you know this undervaluing my own achievements, or even doubting it was even me. You kind of look back at something, and you kind of think, how did you get away with having that job for that long? Surely I would have been. So it kind of verges a little bit into that imposter, the
Imposter
whole kind of
syndrome.
imposter thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely does show up in that sort of, having to take that deep breath sometimes and say, right, okay, I'm hearing, you're Betsy. I need to think of a name for mine.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that voice is actually it's a voice from the past. It's resonating. It's something that somebody has maybe said some way in the past that has I've never really settled in my own head. I've never really resolved. And so when I feel that doubt, and that voice gets louder, and that's when the comparison comes up. So, as I say, it might be, in something as simple as, God, she's got such a stylish wardrobe, and I don't, God, I wish I could look like that, or whatever. It could be that. I mean, I think as well, social media doesn't help. You know, people put their best lives on the, you know, they put their filtered
Yeah.
pictures of themselves, or they put their, you know, oh, look at my beautiful house. And you look around yours and you think, oh, you know, I really need to mop that floor, really need to, you know, get some fresh flowers. I mean, I did today. You know, today I was like, why haven't I got a beautiful bouquet of fresh flowers in the background? Because, you know, I've got to show that I live in this beautiful house, in this beautiful life. And that's, you know, something that I guess you fall into, because
Yeah.
we're given so much now, so much almost false insight into other people's lives. So
Mm.
you see the, you know, whether you want to call it the swan, and you don't see the legs frantically underneath the water, or you only see the cherry on the top of the cake, or whatever analogy you want to use. So we're
Yeah.
actually, again, it comes back to this unfair comparison. We're comparing ourselves against something that is actually nothing like us, and
Yeah.
doesn't, you know, the comparison doesn't bear out at all.
Yeah, and I think the social media thing's really, really big, isn't it? Because I know that I remember in the beginning when I first started my business and I met a lot of other coaches locally, and I remember having this moment of, oh wow, why are they getting business and I'm not? Oh, look at them, they're really busy. Oh, look at how much coaching they're doing and I'm not. And once I started to process that and started focusing actually on my business and what I could do and the clients I did have, that's when I started to think, oh yeah, do you know what, this is a bit of show reel of life. They're sharing with me what they want me to see. I think, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but yesterday we were chatting, we were at networking or netwalking, and we were talking, weren't we, about what people share that actually is probably from 18 months ago, or they share a holiday picture and you might comment and go, oh wow, where are you? And actually they're not, they're just sharing stuff from ages ago, but it's what they
That's
want you
right.
to see.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, quite likely they're doing that because at some level they're feeling a lack of confidence, and they're needing that sort
Yes.
of, you know, that feed to come back and say, oh wow, that's brilliant, you know, oh that's so good, so much fun, or whatever. So that, you know,
Yeah.
they're putting it out there to try and reel some of that in to boost their own confidence. And that
Yeah.
becomes such an invidious thing, doesn't it? Because, you know, as that it spirals, because the more people put that on, the more other people go, oh, I'm not, so I haven't got that to put on. Oh, what can I put on? And then it all just becomes so false, so false.
Yeah. And
But yeah, I mean, and it's coming through all forms. I mean, there are so many forms of social media. That, you know, it definitely comes through in all forms, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or, you know, Twitter, X, whatever.
it's
Yeah,
coming at you from all
crazy.
angles. I think as well there's something in that, whether it's true or not, a little bit like we said, you know, what I was thinking and what you were thinking in our networking example, but whether what you see is true or not, it's your perception of, isn't it, of that person's reality. So you
Yes.
automatically, because we're hardwired for negative thinking, so we're always going to go to the place of, I'm not good enough, or I don't have as many clients as them, or my house isn't as. I mean, look, I'm sat here with my pants hanging on the door, you know, and you can see all the rubbish on the floor and all of that kind of thing. But I think it comes back to managing your inner critic and that voice in your head that says, "Hang on, either get off social media because it's making you miserable, or come back to the point of it's the show reel of life and they're showing you what they want you to see. This isn't reality, it's only what you're perceiving to be reality." Does that make any sense? I think that makes sense.
It does absolutely. And that's why it feels so real, because you
Mm,
are really feeling that feeling of, you know, whether it's, you know, sort of a bit of despair, perhaps. I mean, you know, I think for
yeah.
me that certainly in a professional sense, it has the risk of making me feel very disheartened and just think, you know what, you're
Yeah.
going down the wrong track here. You shouldn't be trying to build a new business, for example. You know, like when you were saying, when you started out, everybody else is coaching. And, you know, I'm kind of like, well, you know, everybody else has got loads of mediation work, and everybody else has got, you know, are doing, you know, people are doing other workshops, and they're doing amazing workshops. And why does nobody want my workshop? and there is a temptation to just go, well, I'm clearly not going to make it, so why do I bother? And really just really feel very deflated. And that's where, you're absolutely right, because it's a real feeling in that moment for you, whether or not what you're comparing to is reality for that other person or not. It's
Yeah.
so real.
Yeah, and some of those emotions you've talked about there, about being quite disheartened, quite deflated, and almost this
Mm.
thing of, oh well, I think for me, I either go down the road of, oh, maybe I should be doing that too, rather than yes, oh, should I? And then I gather myself a little bit now, not so much in the beginning of my business, but more so now. I gather myself and go, actually, no, come back to my values, what's really important to me, what my business is about. And no, I shouldn't, I hate that word as well, I shouldn't be doing those things, because actually that's not what my business is built on. And even if I do that, who's to say they're going to come to them over me? So let's just focus on me, my business, and what I know I'm good at, and what I can deliver, and what I bring to the table. And also for me, sometimes it's
Yeah,
remembering that,
absolutely.
yeah, and sometimes it's remembering as well that some of the conversations that we have in mediation, right, and probably in your Lego SeriousPlay workshops as well, and particularly in coaching, is that they're so confidential that actually I don't want to share them. I don't want to put it on social media. And then my values creep in around authenticity and integrity, and say, no, just, the world's not going to stop if you don't post on LinkedIn your fabulous best life for a few days.
Absolutely right. And, there are cases where people have shared things that they really shouldn't have shared. And that can get you into some serious bother. And, it really does undermine your integrity, whether you're a coach, whether you're a mediator, in particular. I mean, it could invalidate the whole agreement if you're a mediator. So you've
Yeah,
got to be really,
yeah.
really careful, and you could lose your accreditation. So, absolutely, you don't want to be putting sort of that stuff out there. But just going back to what you said before, and I remember hearing you speak at that event at Fontwell, and one of the things that really resonated, and you've kind of reiterated it there, is about staying in your lane. And comparisonitis does kind of tempt you to go into another lane.
Yeah. Come
Try
over
this, try
here.
it this
Yeah,
way,
yeah, yeah.
because it's working for that person. And actually, that as a sort of whether it's a little what's the word, mantra,
Yeah,
stay in your lane,
yeah,
stay in your lane, stay in your lane, is
yeah.
is is a really, I mean, I love that, as that came out of your talk that you did then. And I still think that in this context of talking about comparisonitis, stay in your lane is a good coping technique.
And I think for me, that's probably one of the biggest learnings in 5 years of business, is about staying in your lane. And that's absolutely, when you see those things and you start comparing yourself, no, stay in your lane, stay, yeah, there might be some similarities. And I'm not sure I believe in the whole grass is greener. I think the grass is greener where you water it. So if that's in your lane, then water your lane. Don't water somebody else's, because what's the
Yeah.
point? And I also think as well, there's this piece on when you're in that comparison state, if you like, if that's what we're going to call it, then back to your two Lego people, it's an unfair comparison, right? If you
Mm.
compare yourself with yourself, so if you just had one person and you're comparing yourself with yourself, that feels like the focus is then in the right place. It's in your lane. It's you're focusing on you. You're not worried about what they're doing over there, because actually, why would you not just want to focus on what you're doing? Yes, I
Yeah.
mean, take inspiration from other people around you, but you don't need to be doing the same things as they do, because actually you don't know whether they're having success or not.
Absolutely, and that kind of is how I tend to deal with it. I sort of have two things really, and one is exactly that, sort of rationalizing that comparison. Is this a fair comparison? Does it make sense? Do I even want that? So I might be looking at it going, oh my goodness, they've got a fantastic, 6-bedroomed house with 7 bathrooms and a gold toilet and God knows. But I don't want that. So why am I even getting uptight about that? So it's that sort of like, is it a good comparison? Is it a fair, reasonable comparison to feel to ignite this feeling in you? And then the second bit of it is the so what? So what? What does it really matter? Is this a really, is it so important, this element that you have highlighted about this other person, that it really does impact you and makes you have to, change the way you are and change what you do. Because, and if it doesn't pass the, rational reasonableness test, and it doesn't pass the so what, then why do I, at that point I just kind of go, no, that's fine. And there's a phrase, comparison is the thief of joy, and I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah, I love that.
Theodore Roosevelt. But I think
Yeah,
that's absolutely right, because you know you can say, I'm really pleased because I've grown a herb garden and I've got 3 herbs in a window box and they're all thriving and it's brilliant. And then you could go, oh, but they've got a whole greenhouse full of herbs and they've got 7 types of herbs. And you just take away all the joy that you've got about your achievement.
yeah,
So, I love that. I think that's a great sort of, it's a great phrase to bear in mind. Like, actually, have joy in what you do, in what you're achieving in your life, in your way, that's authentic to you.
yeah.
And if you
I
do
love
that,
those.
the
Yeah,
comparisons fall away, don't they?
yeah.
They don't
Well,
matter.
and back to your confidence diminishes it, doesn't it? Having almost back to having confidence in yourself, I guess. I love the whole rational, reasonable, and so what. That's brilliant. Yeah. So what? So what if they've got 7 next door? So what if they've got a better garden? Actually, what I've got over here is all
Yeah.
right for what I want and need right now.
It,
How do you
yeah.
where do you see comparison in the people that you work with, and then how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so if I think about mediation, one of the key things about mediation is that in the conversations you're trying to get both parties to obviously talk about what their particular dispute, but you're also trying to get them to think a lot more about the sort of all of the issues. And in doing that, what tends to come out is that the dispute is one thing, but actually what's creating the inability to resolve the dispute are countless other things which may or may not have anything to do with the person that they're in dispute with, but they're just all going on in that person's life. And sometimes, some of it is based in comparisonitis. There was one dispute which was a neighbour dispute, and it was 2 properties that were semi-detached. Both decided they wanted to extend. And at first, they both talked about it, really excited. Oh, isn't it great? We're both going to extend together, and blah blah blah. And then one of the neighbours went and engaged an architect and got some drawings and decided that's what they were going to do. And the other one was like, well, I thought we were doing this together, and got really upset that the other family had kind of gone ahead. So then they went, well, fine, I'm going to do my own thing. So then they engaged like um, conservatory company, and they had this conservatory
Okay.
built. But through the course of both the builds, which were sort of going on concurrently, the arguments just escalated. Oh, you're trespassing on, I don't take that fence panel down. You're trespassing on my garden to do the pointing on your brickwork, blah, 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 blah. And it escalated into a full-blown dispute that then came to mediation. And, fundamentally, it was all about one party feeling like the other had, a bigger, they weren't the same size properties, even though they were semi-detached. So one had the bigger one and they had 2 parking spaces and this person only had one. And, these people had, were always going off on holiday, but these ones couldn't really afford. And oh my goodness. And when it came down to it, ultimately, so much of the issues either side were about nothing at all to do with the extension. Both were actually perfectly happy with the purpose of their extension. One wanted it to be a nice kind of, in and out of the garden, kind of like, not indoor outdoor space. The others wanted it to be much more functional, to be able to put utility room in and all that kind of stuff. So it was very much a functional part of the property. Both had what they wanted, but that they'd allowed it to get the comparisonitis to get in the way.
Yeah, wow.
Crazy.
Without probably realizing that's what they were doing. And when you step back and look at that, yeah, that's all about
That's
what they
right.
have and don't have on each side of the fence, so to
That,
speak. Yeah,
yeah,
wow.
absolutely, absolutely. And you know, and it happens in the Lego workshops as well, where, you know, particularly when I'm working with teams, that you know, perhaps if we're working on something that is about sort of, you know, strengths or resilience, or, you know, something within a
Mm.
team context, and, you know, people will kind of talk about the model that they've built, but in relation to, you know, oh well, I've done this, but it's, you know, oh well, they sort of did it better, or they said it better. And as a facilitator, then it's about trying to unpick that and trying to get people to really focus on, you know, this is your model we're talking about. I'm not going to, you know, nobody can tell you that your model is this or that or the other. This is your model for you to own and you to talk about, and that kind of helps to get over some of that comparisonitis. What also
Yeah.
helps in that context is that quite often colleagues will jump in and say, "Oh no, but you're really good at that. You know, you should have made that model bigger, because that part of what you've done, you're brilliant at." And they go, "Oh, you've never told me that before." And that's where this sort of confidence boosting comes in to diminish the
Yeah.
comparisonitis.
That, I mean, that quote, Claire, you're going to see that because I'm borrowing that with pride. The whole comparison feeds fear and confidence diminishes it. Maybe that's a contender to the thief of joy. We'll put our names to
Yeah.
it. Oh, I'll quote you for that one, but you might see that
Yes.
appear. So I'm going to put you on the spot now, just to
Brilliant.
sort of wrap up and ask you
Mm.
what would be your 3 tips then for anyone who's experiencing comparisonitis?
Well, so I think the three things are, you know, sort of the two that I've already mentioned is rationalize the
Yeah.
comparison. So have a word with yourself. Just take a breath, have a word, and just go, right, is this a fair comparison? If you go, actually, yes, it is a fair comparison, because in all respects, you know, you know, it is a fair comparison. Then you ask the so what question. So what? So, you know, and that could be, so what, as in, so what, why does it matter? Or so what are you going to do about it?
Mm.
If really this is bringing up something, then it is within your power. It's within all our power, if we want to, and we have the sort of, you know, the wherewithal to do it, to make changes if we want to. So actually, if it is a case of, you know, I don't know, that person has a better wardrobe than mine, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to make better choices? Are you going to go and are you going to engage a stylist to see what your style is? Are you going to, you know, go and strip out your wardrobe and sell some of it on Vinted and buy some new stuff? What are you going to do about it? So that's the sort of the so what, really. And I think the other thing is, it's about doing things that not only boost your own confidence, but actually being one of those people that helps to boost other people's confidence.
Mm.
So, you know, because I think that that comes back to you. So if you say, you know, you go past somebody and you say, wow, but your fragrance is lovely. You know, it's lovely fragrance you're wearing. What is it? Or something, or oh, that dress looks great on you, or that color looks good on you, or, you know, you go up to somebody and you say, oh, I just wanted to say, I just read your last post on LinkedIn and I thought it was so insightful. Thank you for sharing that. Whatever it might
Mm.
be, little things along the way, noticing things about people, boosting their confidence will bring it back to you.
I'm
I
sure of
really
that.
believe that. So I think that anything that you can do to, you know, to boost others is a really good way to just get rid of comparisonitis for good, really.
Yeah.
Um, I've got another little phrase that, again, I love these little phrases. I've probably got a whole little book of them somewhere, but you know, it's blowing out somebody else's candle doesn't make yours shine any brighter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, so many things that happen, are about blowing out other people's candles, and there is a cruder phrase for that. I
Yeah.
won't say it, but actually, if somebody's done well, if somebody's got something, even if you do think kind of like, I don't know why they were nominated for that award, because I think I should have been, or even if they win that award and you didn't, even though you were both nominated, actually celebrate with them, tell them well done, boost them up, because it doesn't cost you anything, and it actually does make you feel better as well,
I
and
don't know if
it'll come
you,
back.
we're recording this just at the time of the Olympics, and I don't know if you saw, there's a video going around social media, the irony of that, I'm sure it was on the news too, of Simone Biles and her teammate who won silver and bronze, I
Yes.
think. I mean, let's be honest, if you are in competition with Simone Biles, you're probably competing for second and third, but on this occasion they were second and third, and I think it was an Australian gymnast that won the gold medal, and as she came on to the platform to get the medals, they kind of bowed, didn't they? And I thought, actually, that's really class.
Yes, they did.
That was a really, really lovely
That,
gesture. Really nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and it's a whole other conversation. But women don't do that enough for each other.
No, I agree.
And that was superb. Yeah, but that
Yeah.
absolutely perfect example, because as you say, she's probably discounted
Yeah.
that she would get. Simone's going to get the gold. The best I can hope for is, and actually,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, really, really nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I digress then. So your rationalise. What was your other one? Sorry, Claire, that's really poor
So
of me.
it's the
So what?
yeah, the so what
Yeah,
test,
yeah, I
so
love that.
and again, that could be, so what are you going to do about it, or so
Yeah,
what does it matter? So it depends on the situation, almost depends on the answer to the first one.
yeah,
So
and we always have a
and
choice.
then it's about, just again coming back to that, you know don't let comparisonitis feed the fear, boost confidence in yourself and
Yeah,
others. Put on the dress that you feel great in, even if it's a summer dress and it's raining outside, or whatever it is. Do that for yourself.
yeah, I love it. Oh, Claire, thank you. This has been fascinating. It's such a comparisonitis is something that's around us all of the time, isn't it? Without us even realizing it and thinking about it. I think naturally we do too much of it. But I love your litmus test of have a word with yourself. I'd suggest be kind, have a compassionate, be compassionate with yourself, be kind, unless, of course, not being kind works for you, but I'm not sure that works for anybody. But the whole, is it fair? And then so what? The so what thing for me is we have a choice, right? So if, to use your example, if you're
Yeah,
going to go and pull apart your whole wardrobe, how realistic is that as well? So what can you do about it? And if you can't, and if you're happy in what you're wearing, then you don't need to be like that person over there. Back to the whole, the grass isn't
that's
always
right.
greener, the grass is greener where you water it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Thank
Absolutely. And I
you.
think it's, it's, you always get these things where people say, what would you tell your 18-year-old self? And
Yeah.
it's probably that.
Yeah. Just go for it. Just do
Yeah.
it. So, Claire, if people want to find out more about you, about mediation, or about Serious Lego Play, where can they find you? And we'll put this in the show notes.
Well, I'm all over LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn quite easily. There is another Claire Henley. She paints beautiful scenes of Cornwall. So if
Oh,
you get on a LinkedIn profile that looks like I'm not a painter, it's not me. Search for another one. Um, yeah, so on LinkedIn, or also my website, which is www.cacheassociates.co.uk.
great. Thank you. And it's been lovely chatting to you about comparisonitis, particularly with our example, but also some of the things we've talked about. And I think that there probably won't be anybody that listens to this that doesn't suffer with comparisonitis. And if you don't suffer with it, I'd love to hear from you, because I'd love to know how you manage it. So thanks, Claire. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for saying yes to being a guest.
Thank
Um,
you so much, Gail. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you next time on the Confidence Conversations podcast.